The very start of the censorship industry really comes from Google. It was Jared Cohen who was the man who, in many respects, is sort of the godfather of the censorship industry. This was. Do I have time to go off on this?
Please, please. I'm finding this fascinating.
Yeah. So the way we did dirty tricks in the 20th century in the U.S. empire, and by the way, you can make the argument that this was all for the good of the world at the time. I don't necessarily, believe that, but I think that there are schools of thought that say, you need a Department of Dirty Tricks because it's a mean world out there. And if you don't do it, somebody else will. And you could argue as a U.S. citizen that it redounded to the benefit of the U.S. With the reason that we had cheaper gas than Europe or other countries is because we had domination over oil and gas, which was made possible only because of our dirty tricks powers from the Pentagon, the CIA. Same thing with our export markets. We had Bethlehem Steel, and how could we export steel to all these other countries? Well, we pried them open using our, Department of Dirty Tricks, so to speak. It wasn't all arm's length trading. It was getting favorable governments in place by overthrowing governments who resisted us. My beef with this comes, and I'm saying this because, wearing my diplomat hat, I think it's important for people to know I'm not just opposed to all this on principle. It's because it was weaponized against U.S. citizens. And they did the same tricks to us starting in 2016 when they didn't like who we were voting for because they didn't like, the way we were using the internet and who we were supporting online to circumvent legacy media. But anyway, going back to Google, we ran our diplomacy and statecraft operations, our intelligence underworld, through embassies, consulates, and CIA station houses for the entirety of the 20th century. From the 1940s through, basically the early 2000s, everything was done. If we wanted to overthrow a government in Iran, for example, we would have an embassy set up there. We'd have consulates, we'd have CIA station houses, and we'd work with dissident groups manually in an analog fashion, or in Tunisia or in Egypt, as we saw with the Arab Spring. With the rise of social media in 2004, you had Facebook 2004, you had YouTube 2005, you had Twitter 2006, and then you had the smartphone in 2007, which made it really ubiquitous and mobile. There began to be a new power for running covert operations, for running regime change at a scale that never existed in the analog era. And this becomes a Google story because of a guy named Jared Cohen, who was this whiz kid who I think at the age of something like 26 was recruited to basically the inner sanctum of coordinating State Department and CIA operations within the State Department. It's the policy planning staff. This guy was a Republican. Cohen was a Republican pick from Condoleezza Rice. So a Bush Republican political appointee. And he looked around in his late 20s. He had done a lot of work. He had created something called movements.org. And, had this whole sort of Rhodes Scholar network where he had been embedded within these sort of Middle East, North Africa groups as a kid. And, a lot of what the CIA and State Department do for revolutions is working with youth movements, student groups, young people, because they provide the rent-a-riot street muscle that is necessary for the end stage of running the actual government out of office. As you can see in, for example, the footage of in Yugoslavia, they surround the parliament building and run out of office. Same thing with the Maidan revolution in Ukraine. So Jared Cohen came to this State Department CIA inner sanctum with a sort of young person's knowledge of, how people were using this new social media apparatus in the early 2000s. And he looked around at all these 40, 50, 60-year-olds who were stuck in the sort of analog era. And he said, what are we doing running these operations out of CIA station houses and embassy consulates? Everyone we want to recruit's on Facebook. Everyone's on Twitter. You got people making YouTube videos. You can get 100,000 people in the street simply by creating a hashtag, simply by, you don't need to spend 11 months running, money out of, running unmarked bills out of black duffel bags and, talking to leaders and them talking to the lieutenants and them talking to their own masses in the region. You can centralize this all on social media. So he came up with a doctrine jointly with Condoleezza Rice that was known as Diplomacy 2.0 or digital statecraft. And this was deemed to be so mission critical to the State Department's work that Jared Cohen was kept on at State when there was a changeover from Republican to Democrat when Barack Obama won the 2008 presidential election, and you had Hillary Clinton become the Secretary of State. And so, Hillary Clinton and Jared Cohen kept that game running, and it culminated in 2010, 2011 in the high watermark of free speech on the internet, the Arab Spring, which is when Tunisia and Egypt and one by one, all of these governments who were declared authoritarians and wanted to be toppled by the Obama administration were all toppled in Facebook revolutions and in Twitter revolutions. And at that point, Jared Cohen was the talk of Washington. People were talking, this kid's going to be president. This young guy before the age of 30 was declared by Time magazine as one of the 50 most powerful people in Washington. He could have done anything. And he sort of surprised the entire foreign policy establishment world when he decided to leave the State Department at the height of his power, so to speak, and celebrity, to join what was at the time a company that was not even in the top 100 by market cap. It was only 120, I think, in 2010. And it was this mid-sized company called Google. Yeah. And Jared Cohen was given a very strange job at Google, which is to sit in a room by himself and stare at a white wall and think about all of the interesting ways that Google could use its proprietary resources and data to solve complex geopolitical problems. This was the moment that Julian Assange sort of, picked up on and wrote about, where he described this as the moment that Google became the shadow State Department, with Jared Cohen serving as the CIA State Department liaison directly to Eric Schmidt. Him and Eric Schmidt would become thick as thieves. They would co-write a book together on the future of democracy in the digital age. And it would be from there, Jared Cohen took a very keen interest in the 2016 presidential election and would then turn this one-person think tank, Google Ideas, into a new vehicle called Google Jigsaw, which would go on to create the first retail weapons of mass deletion, the AI censorship technology that started off being funded by DARPA, the same way Google started off being funded by DARPA, essentially. And these were the AI censorship tools that would come to ensnare.
So Jim Rickards has just recorded a video that's not available to anyone in the public, and he's going to be talking about how this upcoming recession is going to be fast, it's going to be bloody, it's going to be nasty. But at the same time, he's going to show you how you can position yourself to profit from all of this chaos. Now, we've made this video only available to our viewers. Go to londonreal.tv/Jim. Watch that immediately. I can't say enough good things about Jim Rickards. He understands the global economic system better than any guest I've ever had on London Real. His predictions are almost uncannily true, and you can learn how to profit from his vision, from his expertise, and his understanding of economics. So go to londonreal.tv/Jim or click the link below. It's an excellent, excellent look on what's going to happen in the future and how you can position yourself to profit from that. Jim is one of the best in the business, one of my favorite guests on London Real, and he's very, very good at predicting the future and showing us all to profit from it. So click the link, and I hope you enjoy. The greedy bankers are about to do it again. In 2008, they crashed our financial system and nearly bankrupted the entire global economy. Then they received trillions of dollars in government bailouts. And after, they demanded fat bonuses paid for by you, the taxpayer.
It turns out the banks haven't just been screwing the American taxpayers, they're also screwing over their investors. Turns out the banking industry is the worst place you could put your money, despite enormous taxpayer bailouts.
Now the bankers are back to take away your financial freedom. They lie and tell you that cryptocurrency isn't safe. They try to make it illegal for you to choose how to invest your hard-earned money. They lie and say cryptocurrency is used by money launderers and criminals. But look at the record. It's the banks themselves that launder hundreds of billions of dollars every year to the biggest criminal operations in the world.
Leaked documents have revealed how some UK banks have helped criminals, money launderers and Russians under sanctions.
American authorities discovered that the Sinaloa cartel moved $881 million through HSBC accounts as bank officials turned a blind eye to the illegality.
The bankers lie and say cryptocurrency is not a real investment. Meanwhile, the smartest CEOs in the world are buying billions and billions of it. The truth is that banks lie about cryptocurrency because it makes them scared. The banks take $9 trillion per year of your hard-earned money, and they are worried that they will finally be exposed. They're scared because crypto means they can no longer control your money, which means they can no longer control you. They are scared because you might actually understand your money and intelligently decide what to do with it. Now is the time for us to come together, fight back, and take control. It's time to educate ourselves, our families, and our communities. Because financial education means financial freedom. We know that cryptocurrencies will help us build the new decentralized financial system of the future. A banking system that is of the people, by the people, and for the people. A banking system where access to finance is a fundamental human right. A banking system that is free and fair and welcomes all humans on this earth. The DeFi revolution is happening. We, the people, can no longer be fooled. We choose to take control of our finances. We choose to take control of our freedom. We choose to take control of our future. Join us, and let's take back our financial freedom forever.